Yeah. Give it to me now. Give it to me now. They gon' make a sister act up. Tell my attitude back up.
What's good, everybody? What's good? Welcome back to yet another episode of Off the Strength, where we're giving you the inside look into all things wellness culture. I'm a trainer called Tony, and of course with me, I got some gentlemen of extraordinary league. Guys, let's go around the table and introduce ourselves, please.
KR Jones is in the building. Good morning.
Troy Brooks is here. Good morning.
You're Trina Corey.
Danny Alotta.
Oh, damn, my man Danny just jumped right into the cipher. I couldn't even give this man his flowers in the intro, Danny.
Oh, I don't need flowers. Just, just
man.
bouquets. Just bouquets.
So hold up, let me pull this back a little bit, gents, because I know that we know this man, and we got to make sure that the listeners know that he got a whole lot of different ways to operate inside this space. You see
a lot of ways.
Exactly, various ways that he's getting to this bag over here. So first things first, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls from near and far, you are in store for a treat today. Now, it's always a pleasure when we have friends and family up here, and let me tell you, this man is a wealth of knowledge in many different categories. Guys, let's go around and make a round of applause for the homie who jumped in the double dutch a little earlier. Make some noise for Danny one time, fellas. He's ready to go. I know Danny got the b-boy spirit in him. He's like, yo, let me just grab this mic real quick. Turn my heads up. You know, what's going on, Danny? How you feeling, brother?
I'm great, man. It's good to see you guys. Definitely been a minute, so I'm happy to be here.
Man,
What's up, man?
always a pleasure. And Danny, I really do mean that. Wealth of knowledge in multiple categories, multiple disciplines, and hopefully we can get to go through some of that today.
Looking forward to it. Somebody got the BLS voice. I don't know who it was. He said, good morning. You
Good
know,
morning.
yeah.
Yeah, he got
You are
that
now
very white
listening to
shit
the Quiet
going on.
Storm.
You gotta let people know, man. You know, on an overcast kind of day, this is gonna hit the right way, man.
Yeah.
You
No
know,
rain on the window.
he let you know.
At some point, he's going to be like, woo, woo, woo.
That's when we got the backups for when you get into the story. You know,
Right.
we're gonna hit you with all the vocalizing
Okay.
coming inside there, man.
That sounds good.
You know, but before we get into the sweet tones,
Swing low.
you know, before we get into that, we got some questions
are
that I like to
crazy.
break out, fam.
Okay.
Danny, I gotta ask you, the listeners want to know, and they're gonna find out a lot when you answer, where were you when you first fell in love with this thing that we call wellness, my man? Give me that story.
Probably like 5 years old.
Take me through it, man. Paint the picture.
I was definitely the epitome of the Bad News Bears playing baseball. I couldn't hit the ball unless the ball hit me. But, you know, we come from a generation where you got to put the hard work in. You don't get a trophy just for participating.
For sure.
And by year 2, I was just hitting the ball out the box, right? So it was like, it was a ill transformation of seeing that, and that's definitely when I fell in love with sports, right?
Okay.
And sports is definitely wellness.
Where was that? What was the place?
Elm Jack in
Okay.
Queens.
Okay,
right?
okay.
Queens
It
in
was
the building.
the Bantams, the
Yeah.
Bantam division.
We're getting dangerously close to our Queens quota right now. We got 2 dudes in here.
Shout
A lot of
out to
Brooklyn. We
Queens.
can't have.
Shout out to Queens, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can't go too far into that neighborhood. You know, we know, guys.
Brooklyn's outnumbered, actually, because Corey's kind of borderline.
He's out
You
there,
know what
too.
I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm Long Island,
He's
baby.
a hybrid, which is kind of Queens.
Yeah.
We looking.
I told you before, I'm so Brooklyn, I'm not even from here.
We trying to make it work, man. So, all right, this is the early formative days inside of Queens, and then how'd that evolve as you went through?
I mean, I think even from the culture of like playing on the block, right? Like I actually don't even really see kids playing on the block anymore. But like as a city kid, you made up games from stoop ball to over the wire to asses up. Like everything was outdoors and you played all day long. And I think that while you may not at that age realize that's wellness, when you mature, you be like, wow, okay, like that really is where that love comes from. Because you got to play till the street lights came on.
Okay, that's what's up, man. And again, I remember those days vividly, dude. I remember seeing that light start to flicker. You're like, all right, we got one more time.
Right.
Yo, we playing till 11? We playing till 11. Let's go.
Like, I definitely remember the schoolyard was across the street from the house, and like, you'd push that limit, and then someone would be like, yo, your dad's coming.
Oh, damn.
It's time to break out.
And they'd be like, what you want me to do? I was like, oh, you might as well throw the ball. I might as well get one more swing.
Might as well get one
I'm going to
more.
get the swings
We'll get the
later.
swing anyway.
So, yeah, you'd push that time limit.
Yeah,
but,
man.
I mean, that's where it came from.
Now, I understand where stickball and baseball is starting to come about, but I also know that you got some hooper spirit in your life, too. Man.
I do. I mean, I played 3 college sports.
Okay.
I actually went there for rowing. I went
Okay.
to Temple University.
Right on.
And most people are like, yo, where did you row in the city? But I happened to go to a YMCA sleepaway camp, and the guy who taught all the boating was the head of U.S. rowing. He taught me, and like water has always been like a peaceful place for me. It's like Central Park, water, whatever. Like that's where I zen out. And I think as a city kid, those fresh air moments are really, important, right? So like just to be able to get away like that, I wanted to be on the water all day, and I actually became pretty good, right? So, he got me a tryout to like a prominent club in the city where I got on scholarship to in high school. But then when I was there, totally by accident, I wound up playing football. And that was the one sport my mom growing up was like, you cannot play football, right? So here it is, like never playing like a day in my life except for in the street.
Yeah.
And now I'm playing D1 Big East football, and it was like, oh, okay, this is different, like
For sure.
yeah. And then I would say I fell in love with track and field, and then started running track and field there, and wish I would have found that sooner, because track and field definitely became the sport that it was the best of all three.
I'm hearing the motor is serious inside this man.
So the lungs are kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Like rowing is a combination of super endurance and sprints.
For sure.
With football, it's all about explosiveness and power. And full disclosure, while I had respectable speed, I didn't have lightning speed. So when it came to track and field, what could I run? I could run the 400. While I could do 100 and 200, I wasn't going to win any races.
Yeah.
But with the 4, while, again, after every 2, I'd be losing, but I could run even splits. So everybody be like, he's got no work for us. And then everyone would be like, just wait, because he doesn't get tired. So I could run 12,
When you ran
12,
your 4 in even splits?
12, 12, 12, 12, or
No,
11,
that's-
7, 11, 7.
For people who know track,
This man's
That's
got
different.
a motor.
Yeah.
that's different.
Nothing about what you talking about.
So, I wound up blending where I came from with the development of getting more speed.
For sure.
But yeah, that was the only way, because I wouldn't hold on. I wouldn't have enough to keep up with the people in the first 2, so there's no point in trying.
Yeah.
Let me just run the way I know how to run, and that was it.
There's something that I like that I want to go back into just for a second when you're talking about the pleasures of being outdoors as a city kid and what that meant. And now I'm reminded of literally what we talked about yesterday and coming in. Can you give the listeners a little bit of a breakout as to how that still presents to this day? Because this man is not just talking about it. He's actually out here trying to give people the same thing that he was looking to find in his adolescence. So talk a little bit about that whole camp situation.
So I'm in a social group called Mastermind Connect. It's a real good group of brothers, and we have this thing called Camping to Connect. And that's where we enable inner city kids to experience camping, the outdoors, lakes, all of those types of things where there's a void of in the city. And, like growing up in the city, there are certain pressures that city kids face that kids in the suburbs don't know about. Not that kids in the suburbs don't have problems.
Yeah.
But kids in the city face unique circumstances. Classrooms probably got 40 kids in them. It's underfunded. They don't have athletics in school. They don't have gym time in school. When are they seeing green spaces?
When are they seeing stars, man?
They don't. Like, that's the crazy thing. Even when I go somewhere and it's like, there's not a lot of like city light, you're like, oh, I forgot that was there, right?
Yeah, there's a whole ass universe up
right.
there.
And depending on that, like what you see, you can't take a picture of it because you don't have the right camera, but you're like, man, I wish I could take this home with me, right? So city kids don't ever see that.
Yeah.
And so like what we had last night was a fundraiser for Camping to Connect. So the first time that we did it, we actually took a group of young men from the city and camped overnight at Governor's Island. And like so many of those kids were like, yo, this is the greatest experience of my life. And these are not 12-year-olds. These are 15, 16, 17-year-old high school boys that have never had the chance to be outdoors and do stuff like that. And I think that's tragic, because I know, like, I went to a YMCA camp that was affordable. But that same camp now, just because of insurance, et cetera, it's like $700-800 a week.
Yeah.
And that's an affordable camp. You send a kid to camp nowadays for the summer, it's like 10 stacks.
Yeah.
Let's get serious.
Yeah, you need to stay. You got to kick it here.
That's a lot of money. Like, what family can just be like, okay, and if you got 2 kids?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
20
then,
grand.
yeah. I mean, just for like 5, 6, 7 weeks, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Like,
School's cheaper.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, so unfortunately, a lot of city kids don't experience green spaces. So, our goal is really to empower them to see another side. And so a lot of the kids work within an educational program And as a result, they do get some scholarships. And we encourage them, like, look, if you get the chance, go away from New York City.
Yeah.
See something else, because it'll open up their mind and it'll make them a better person, which is what going outdoors, in my opinion, does for people.
Yeah, and that's a reoccurring theme inside your story, so we're going to come back to that, but I want to kick it off to the fellas for a second. Guys, you had any kind of experiences that shifted your perspective when you were coming up developmentally, like seeing a different space? Like, I remember legitimately the first time I was going out and being inside that campus space was for football, and seeing a bunch of animals is like, yo, what is that? That's not something that I can identify. They don't have those on the block. Oh, that's a skunk? I got to stay away from this guy.
Especially if you get sprayed by a skunk.
I remember again, I grew up not with 2019 eyes. They were trying to catch the skunk and throw it at some kids. Listen, we weren't the best. We had a little bit of growing up to do and some evolving to happen, but it was going down like that. You guys have anything from your adolescent space that you reminisce on?
Well, for me, it was interesting because I always bounced around in different worlds. Like, I grew up in the suburbs, nice little neighborhood by the beach, and then my cousins and all of them were from the hood, so I would always be in Brooklyn in the projects, run around in Queens in the projects, and I would go back and forth. And then because of the schools that I went to, I was with the rich kids, the wild limo drops you off for school in the morning, dad pulls up in a helicopter kids. So those three environments were different for me. So I always had a full view of the world, and I know kids that were the same age as me that didn't know what was outside the city, didn't even get, we would talk about trees and they would think of Central Park. They didn't think of a forest. When you talk about the size of forest, they were you know what I mean? It was blowing your mind because they didn't get to see that stuff. And then some of these kids who had all this privilege and were living wild rich knew nothing about food that tastes good and what different music and having to do and getting to just hoop and run the streets and have freedoms because they live in an environment where it's real stuffy and a bunch of adults and everything's so large that you're mostly at home, and they don't get the same connections. They don't make the same types of friendships. So everybody's experience was mad different, and I got to do all of those things and feel all those things, which is why I could fuck with most people.
Yeah, of course. You're a chameleon because of that. Mm-hmm. I think my story is definitely pretty similar. I told you guys before, I was a Boy Scout for years, and then I graduated to an Eagle Scout. I used to go to 10 Mile River Camp. My mother's fiance at the time, who kind of was my father role growing up, was a Marine and retired. And so we would go up on the weekends to whitewater raft, camp. I learned how to pitch a tent and do all these things before I actually decided to become a Boy Scout. But my mom, because I didn't really have a father figure, kind of threw me into PAL. That's when I used to play ball. It put me into Explorers, which is an organization from the NYPD where you go and you hang out on Fridays, and then you go to the Empire State Building, or you would take a trip up to Bear Mountain,
hanging out with the cops.
Not really hanging out with the cops, but kind of. It was cool where officers would take their time when they were off duty to kind of be almost like a big brothers, big sisters kind of environment, giving kids access, what I always speak about.
For sure. In the Dinkins administration or Dinkins years, I think the PAL was a lot more robust, and it was an extension into community service. So actually how cops are supposed to be, where it's not who's this random dude walking down the block? It's oh, that's Officer Dave.
Yeah, you knew.
This is Roger.
They used to have a lot of those programs. I did a whole commercial program and a whole art layout when I was a kid for PAL, because they used to have things that were all connected and put together. And then it's not like that no more. I don't see that kind of stuff anymore where kids had that connection and those things where they could take you out to different stuff, and the whole remember the whole anti-drug campaign that the kids were doing, and you saw kids art going up and stuff like that. They're not doing that thing anymore. They're not connecting kids the same way, and I think that it kind of shows.
Yeah, there's an evolution in how we are viewed in terms of the community policing and all the rest of that stuff, and hopefully we're starting to move back into a more positive direction on that overall. But I definitely understand where Troy was coming from in that space. Danny, I want to get back to you for a second and start to talk through that college space again. Now, I'm thinking along the lines when you're coming into multi-sport athlete, coming across there, I want to understand, when did the fashion come in? Because, folks, this man is a saucy brother out here. He's trying to play it down, but I definitely see that this eye started early on too, my man. Talk to me a little bit about when style, fashion, and all of the rest of those things started to come into the picture. What was that like?
So, ironically, out of an adverse circumstance is really where it came about. So my senior year of high school, I got diagnosed with cancer, and I would kind of give myself makeovers to feel better. And all that really meant was like getting dressed up to go get my treatment. And the first time I did it, my doctor was like, "Where the hell are you going?" And I was like, "I came to see you, doc. You know, if you look good, you feel good." And he was like, "You're right. Like, I'll never ask you that again." And I noticed like how little things, a new pair of socks. I don't know if I could wear a new pair of socks every day today, I would wear it. Like, something about the feeling of a new, it's like a fresh towel. Like, it's like, I mean, to me, that's heaven, yo. I'd be like, yo, I sit in my towel for like 30 minutes. You know what I mean? Like, so that kind of experience over a few year period of just trying to make myself feel better is when I think I really kind of appreciated style in a different respect, because I noticed kind of the power that it had. And then when I went to Temple, totally by accident, I wound up modeling. I went to visit a friend for lunch when I was home, and they were getting ready for Fashion Week, and their boss at the time, who I didn't realize it was their boss, was like, "Yo, what the hell is he staring at?" You know, he was like, "Yo, man, that's my boss." And next thing you know, dude came over and was like, "Hey, what you doing next week?" I was like, "I don't know, you tell me." He's like, "You want to walk in the show?" I was like, "Sure." And that's how I got started modeling. And then from that, someone at that show was like, "Hey, you want to walk on my show?" And I was like, "Sure." And then there it was. So yeah, I would say it stemmed from an adverse circumstance and then turned into, I would say, a fun circumstance.
For sure. I just want to go, because there's such density inside that one statement, but the fact that somebody accidentally discovered you, like, I promise you, I've been in a bunch of spaces. Nobody accidentally was like, "You know what your face should be on?" Nothing.
Radio. Your face should be on radio. You need
Like,
you got a face for radio.
Yo, podcasting is where you should be.
You got a podcast grill.
So I gotta listen to that. I was like, wait a second, hold on. Maybe I'm not hanging out in the right spaces, is what you're saying, Danny? You know?
I mean, it wasn't what I was intentionally saying, but sometimes it's all in the interpretation, right?
You play with the cards that you was dealt, man.
That's
I
so
hear
funny.
it. I hear it. And making the best out of that circumstance. And I'm hearing what I think is the origin to that Joy Juice mindset and that mentality coming inside that space. Would you mind sharing a little bit more into that direction?
For sure. So Joy Juice happened to be the nickname that I gave chemotherapy, and it was literally my parents were waiting for me at the door. It was time for my first treatment, and I was like, "Come on, it's time for my Joy Juice." And they were like, "What is that?" And I was like, "That's going to be my nickname for chemo." And it stuck. And half a lifetime later, Joy Juice became the name of the nonprofit that I started that provides fashion makeovers to teens and young adults that have cancer. And I think it was through doing that I realized how much power there was in what I did for myself, because I just took it for granted. While I appreciated it, and like every time I was in the hospital, my cousin would bring me sneakers, and it changed the world and the outlook, right? Like, you'd have tubes everywhere, and all you could think about was new sneakers. And I knew how it did positive for me. But again, I think I took that for granted. And then when we started doing makeover events for the young kids, the first couple were beyond emotional, where I really had to take a step back and be like, wow, like, the impact that this is having is kind of crazy.
For sure.
And, you know, it's been a few years now, and we've been blessed to be able to do a good number of events and affect a lot of people. And, you know, you have kids tell you it's the greatest night of their life, you know, and like their parents say, like, "I never thought I'd see my child smile again," you know, and, you know, you get sent letters from parents and letters from the kids. And then, you know, because of the space you're dealing in, you'll get a letter and be like, "Look, I just want to let you know, like, you had such an impact on my child, but they passed away." You know, and that hits you super hard, right? And it's just, you also know the nature of the space that you work in. It's a reality as well. Not everybody makes it. And it's why I kind of prefer to call myself a fortunate as opposed to a survivor, because I'm fortunate to talk to you guys here and have this conversation. Everyone has the right to call themselves whatever they want. If they want to be a survivor, you own that, right? Like, you earned it. I just prefer to use my words a little differently, because I feel like I really am fortunate. I know a lot of people that don't make it, and it's not because they didn't fight. It's just, unfortunately, the cards they were dealt were too strong. But to kind of get back to like that impactfulness and feeling, you know, it's progressed over time as we've done more makeover events, and you know, that modeling experience led to like my first official gig, right?
For sure.
I wound up working for a fashion brand. And over time that morphed where, with one of my best friends, I became a partner in a brand called Public School here in New York.
For sure.
And in the streetwear space, especially with a certain demographic, a lot of people really do know about it. It's done pretty well. And, so it's been a blessing to be a part of that. I've kind of transitioned into new spaces now. I'm still part of the brand. I don't work on the brand anymore, but it's definitely a blessing to see something. It's almost like a child, right? To see it from a whiteboard to full vision and blossom it's definitely a blessing.
Man, I got to shout you out for that. I got the Jordan raincoat, the Jordan collab raincoat right there.
Really?
Right there.
Wearing your homie's joint when he pulls up.
That's how you support it.
Right?
Go buy this shit.
For sure. And if you don't know, please do go check it out. Fellas, how are you feeling about what my man is unpacking in this story right now? Because I know I got some questions to rattle off, but I want to hear from everybody inside the space.
So you didn't mention the book, Danny.
I didn't.
And that's how we met many, many moons ago, through a mutual friend, Tani. Remember that? It's been, I don't even know how many years now.
It's about 7 or 8.
About 7 or 8 years. And that's how we met. And that's how I got connected to Danny. And then I read the book. And it's just been a beautiful journey to see the book transition into an organization and an organization transfer into a one-man show. And for you to be so impactful in the lives. So I just champion you, man. I continue to see you thrive in many areas of your life. And it's been an honor to see you do all that you do, and it's been even more of an honor to call you a friend.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Definitely feel the same. I mean, like I said, we've known each other now for 7, 8 years, and like, when you meet people that are super genuine, because you meet a lot of fake people as well.
Hell yeah.
And I think as we all mature, our bandwidth for that becomes less and less. I know for me, it just shrinks every day because I hate people.
Danny, that's why I like you, though. That's like he hates people just like I hate people.
You hate people? I hate people. You want to be best friends?
Right.
The great thing about both of you, though, is you can hate people, but still have the biggest heart and do so much for people.
For sure.
Right. Like, I mean, it's just, I hate people that are just full of shit, to be honest, right? Like,
too.
I pride myself in, like, if I'm going to do something, I tell you that, I'm going to do everything I can to do it. Like, something will have to happen for me not to do it if I tell you I'm going to do it.
Absolutely.
So,
I'll tell you, Danny, when we met, it was funny because I was in a room full of people that I knew had to be dope. Like, if anyone in here brings you somewhere, the room is full of people who are dope. And that was around the inception of the collective anyway. So when we first met, I was like, all right, another dope dude, what's going on with him? And I was like, this dude is different. In a room full of dope people, this dude's still different. Then every time we link up, every time I hear something, there's some new aspect of your life that I didn't know you did, or some new crazy impressive thing that by itself would have been enough. And then you just keep stacking them. Yeah. Every time I turn around, like, we were sitting walking. He's like, oh, by the way, I did this ad and I was in this. He's like, oh, remember this? And I'm like, yo, I saw you, fam. And I was like, cause he's being real chill about the whole, walk on this show, walk on that show. Like, this dude was making moves. And I remember he said, oh, I did this ad. And I was like, wait, you was the dude with the, Man, I saw you, dog. Like, and it's crazy because then we start talking and I realize I'm wearing things that you've done. Like, yo, when you a fan of your own homies, like for real, and that's how this whole room is. But that's like, that happened immediately. Like day one, I was like, yo, I don't know what this dude does, but I really fuck with this guy. And then the more I know you, the more it comes up. It's ill.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
It's wild when you see your homie in a throwback photo and it's like, yo, I had that poster up in the room. I ain't know nobody in this picture. It was like, wait a minute, fam, wait a minute. I know the magazine that I got this out of. I remember when I put it up, and I know them colors that you had going on inside there. It was like, oh, salute this man. Even from back then, he was already influenced.
Like, this dude sold me shirts. Like, I was like, yo, I'm getting that shirt. I'm getting that shirt.
What they did with that collar.
Yeah, I like the way Kayleen. I'm getting that shirt.
What about the Alizé vibe with the fro? Danny with the fro. I'm like, yo,
man. Oh, Danny Alizé? Danny Alizé?
Danny. With all the ladies around, I was like, oh, if I drink that's my vibe. Gotta go get that.
I'm about to go buy a bottle of Alizé right now.
You know?
Those were definitely good days.
Incredible Hulk days right there, boy.
Yo, now those the dog passion.
Oh, that's right. That was Thug Passions, yeah.
Wow.
I think about just when Tony started the episode, he said that you were a wealth of knowledge. And I think about just a brief conversation that we had the last time we linked up. And everything that you guys were talking about, like we were talking about basketball and basketball shoes. And Danny just laid out this whole story about going to, was it Brazil were you in or what
Venezuela.
Venezuela. And it's just like, yo, fam, I got 2 stamps in my passport. You know what I'm saying? I'm listening to anybody that's going to tell me about traveling, but also to mix it with the culture and the context of the conversation that we had. It's just like, I didn't even think I was going to get this type of insight that you just stumbled upon. Like, oh yeah, man, I was in Venezuela for a little bit, you know, the release of these Nikes, blah, blah, blah. So I think that that's just why you're here, is you have this wealth of knowledge and we just all soaking it up, man. That's it.
We got to tap into that real quick before that goes away. It's crazy that you said that because Danny's done that in multiple ways. He's probably the king of the humble flex, and your name a lot of ways definitely shows people that you are the dude that can get it in every which way. Because I remember one time I saw you in a pair of like black and red Air Max 91s, and I was like, yo, those are dope. And you're like, oh yeah, I had something to do with these. Like I worked on these back in my stint at Nike, and it's just like, what? Like
that's what I mean.
You know what I mean? Like
he just drops wild gems on you.
Like, where you worked where? Oh yeah, you know, like just like.
But look at those stars, though. That was back when I used to be an astronaut. I put that star together real quick. You know what I mean? Me and God did a little collab. We worked on the moon.
It was a wild collab.
Me and Mother Earth sat down for a while. We put this together.
That star is actually Lego, but
it was a one of one. You know, it was very rare, super rare. You couldn't get into that. Yeah, man. It's so again, the complexity of your story, my man, is. Again, just beautiful in and of itself, just kind of like the patchwork that it comes through. But again, I come back to the essence of what I see that transcends in multiple different categories. So cultural currency is something that means a lot to you in every single vertical that we just mentioned. And I know in some of the passing conversations that you feeling like you have to carry that torch going into all of these different spaces has played out in different ways, right? Sometimes they go up and they take your advice the way that they should. Sometimes you can't help but let people fall into their own traps. Danny, can you talk to us a little bit about how the business side was able to evolve, but you still were able to keep cultural currency something that was true to you?
I mean, I think now cultural currency is getting raped.
Yeah.
And that's because of the internet and social media. Anyone can buy in. Whereas when you were coming up, and all of us are in the same demographic, right? So when you're coming up, like, you either had access or you didn't have access.
That's it. For sure. That's it.
Right? And then if you didn't, maybe you caught a glimpse in the magazine, but you wouldn't catch a glimpse the same day the way kids can catch it now, right? Like, even in the sneaker world, right? Like, if you didn't know everyone at all the stores,
you wasn't copping. You weren't copping.
That's it. Period.
You wasn't
in the city, especially.
Right. You were out. Like, if you didn't, like, I remember at least a dozen stores. Like, if they didn't know you by name, when whatever dropped, you were not getting a pair of sneakers.
There was no raffles. There was no tickets. You couldn't get it through an app.
Right. There was
none of that shit mattered.
And you better wear them too.
Yeah.
Let me catch you not wearing them.
Yeah. Like the resell. There was no reselling. Right. Like, you know, I think about like when cats go to Complex Con and you see the young kids, and God bless them because they are creative and they go in there with shopping carts, and on the way out they're already on their phone selling it for 3, 4, 5 times what they paid for it. And that's that's
real
entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
That's amazing, right? But like, as a result, it has definitely changed the landscape and the demographic of things because now everybody has access. But I think at the end of the day, as long as you remain authentic to like your root and like who you are and what you are, then I think you're still solid gold, right? You're still relevant and you're still keeping it true.
For sure.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, again, I admired a lot about our initial conversations because it's one of those things that litmus test, whether you're going to be real or fake, is found out real quick when you're inside of certain rooms, and all the people that are going to rise to the top are going to rise to the top, and everybody else is just going to kind of settle somewhere in between. And I viscerally hate when somebody says that they're one thing and then does something else. That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about I hate people in that sense. Because a lot of people end up having that, you know, that false flag kind of operation, man. You know, I come in and it's like, hey, you said this was going to be one thing, and it ended up being a whole different space.
I mean, as you are aware, I mean, I had recently come on board with a brand that I'm no longer with. And while I wish them well, their cultural currency was garbage, and they were culture vultures. And, you know, we got into some very heated debates about that, about how the person in charge would say, well, they're not our target customer and they have no commercial buying power. Well, we know what that means.
That coded language.
Right. And I sent back a pretty long email that I understand why there was no reply, because I was calling that out. And we all know that the demographic in the city will buy a product and multiple versions of that product for the flex and for the fashion statement. Whereas who he considered the core consumer, they're buying one. So that commercial viability that he thought they didn't have, they were actually the better customer, but to him, they weren't safe. And that's a no-go for me. You know, like when core values aren't aligned, you can't stay on board. And sometimes I understand for financial reasons, people have to. I'm fortunate where I wasn't in that position. So it's been a blessing to have the experience, because I did learn so much from it, right? Even in the conversation when we were parting ways, you know, I remember the gentleman saying like, oh, well, maybe the speed of the startup, you know, relative to your skill set and blah, 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 blah. And I'm a grown ass man, right? Like, I accept the accountability that I have. It was probably my job to learn how to communicate better with him. But, you know, I explained to him, I was like, no, like, while I accept my responsibility, this one happens to be on you for these reasons, you know? So, and the reason is, I was like, look, at the moment, you're a boss. Hopefully you learn to be a leader. Because a leader is supposed to inspire people.
Yep.
You know, like, I know with my friends, everybody in this room, if they needed me, I'll go through a wall, because each one of you inspired me in a different way. But he didn't inspire anyone, and upon my leaving, the gentleman who was the head of the agency working with the brand, the gentleman in charge said, hey, we need to get someone new. And the gentleman that is the head of the agency was like, I actually can't refer anyone that I know to work with you.
Wow.
So, you know, that speaks volumes, right? So, you know, one of the investors did this, and again, I wish them well, but, you know, his MO was kind of to throw shade at me, like, well, maybe you just weren't up for the challenge, or maybe, no, maybe you were so toxic. And again, I had a level of accountability. I could have tried to do this, I could have tried to do that, but, you know, when you're starting something at a quick pace, if something's not right, as the leader, say, hey, I actually need it this way just to save your time. But there was no guidance, no teach, right? And it's not like I'm looking for a pat on the back. But, you know I got off on a little bit of a tangent, but that goes to the cultural relevance.
Yeah. I think it's an important tangent to have. Again, it speaks to not just the quality of man that you are, you know, where your principles and standards are, because, again, he's not talking about something that is, I would say, a failing thing just yet. It could be at the inception of it, take off and have a huge upside, right? That's what kind of deals we're getting into in these spaces, you know? We leverage our experience and our domain knowledge and all the rest of this stuff for the potential of the upside being as big as it is, right? And a lot of times, people that are trying to have this innovative thing but lack the sauce, is what I'm going to call it, you know, inside that cultural space, don't really appreciate all the elements that play into that factor. If it's not quantifiable, if it doesn't come down to a line item, if I can't put it into a fucking program to understand it, you're missing the point. I get what you're saying, but now we got to bring these guys to task, because they dropped the ball, and I had an awesome time trying to collab with my homie, so I got to let them know how I feel about it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, look, 90-something% of the people that we shot were all my friends.
Off the strength.
Right.
Coming in.
So now it's like, okay, look, FYI, none of my friends signed a waiver, and you don't have the right to use their images.
Bow.
So, because, you know, you don't think, you know, okay, you view my friends as safe, right? And they're of a certain age, but the kid that's half their age, not your core consumer, and they're not commercially viable. That's the same person half a lifetime ago.
Exactly.
So, you know, I can't take that ride with that person.
Yeah.
Because it's just too offensive.
Man, I commend you for it, you know? I want to go into still playing around in this same area and still trying to understand a little bit. My man over here is one of the most litigious brothers that I do know as well, because he'll drop you on some science where inside those conversations, they be like, oh, hold up. This dude's talking about vested. Like, where is his stock being vested at the right point in time? Did they make sure that they signed over the IP the right way? Like, there is somebody inside there that is sharp like a katana. You got to pay attention to the brothers that's not speaking in the room, because they taking in all the info and they filtering it through. And if he's filtering it through, it's going to be something sharp. Danny, where did that develop in your story? Because that's one of the things that I admire seriously whenever we get to connect. You drop some science on me that I'm like, oh, okay, Danny's coming through. I see how he's moving down this line. He's playing 6 steps ahead because he knows all the craziness that can go wrong inside there.
It definitely stems from the fact that, my pop was a small business person.
Right on.
And I grew up in the restaurant business. And, people often think, oh, your dad owns a restaurant, you're rich. It means your dad works all the time.
Yeah.
Like he'd work all night and then stay up for breakfast in the morning so that he could go to sleep. But at least he saw me in the morning.
Yeah.
People will think, oh, he's got multiple restaurants. No, he's got multiple headaches. Like,
yeah.
He's busting his ass for his living, right? But people don't realize, like, what it takes to do that. And, I've seen my dad lose restaurants due to, big real estate things happening, get the redevelopment, landlords being crazy, all of that type of stuff. And I think watching my dad get jerked on a couple of occasions, and I was in the room and spoke up, and the lawyers or so tried to quiet me down, and I was right.
Yeah.
And years later, my dad was like, "You were right. Like, we all should have shut up and listened to you." And I was a youngin', and for whatever the reason, I always absorbed that stuff like a sponge. And so as a result, I hate when people get taken advantage of.
For sure.
And I think, especially when you're a son and you have a pop that is kind of like your superhero, and you see him get shitted on. I'm sure it hurt my dad way more than it hurt me, but it hurt.
Yeah.
And as a result, I think I really do have my antenna up for those types of things and really try and digest them as good as I can. And while I know I'm not a lawyer, I can read through a contract and get the gist of it.
For sure.
But I definitely wouldn't sign it without a lawyer still. And there are certain types of lawyers.
Yeah.
My dad had the wrong type, and that's why he got jerked. So, I definitely know that's where it stems from. I mean, look, when I was 10, my dad told me, pick a day you play and pick a day you're working. And one day on the weekend I worked 12 hours, and one day I got to play. So I do think that's really where it comes from. My parents are super hardworking people, one born in the Bronx, one born in Brooklyn. And while they may not be on paper super smart, but they are super smart in their own respects. And, my dad grew up on the street, right? The streets raised him. And so I think a lot of times people discredit what that education is.
Oh, man.
But if you take someone raised on the street and then give them the book smarts as well, they'll crush the person that's book smart.
You want to talk about an acceleration program?
Yeah.
Right.
Because the stakes is a little bit higher in that one.
Right.
The mistakes that you're allowed to make outside versus the ones that you're allowed to make inside of academia, 2 totally different types of mistakes, different type of payout each time.
Right. Ain't no demerits on the street.
Yeah, they not hitting you with the demerits.
They ain't hitting demerits out there.
You're not going to detention over there.
Yeah, I mean, I have conversations with my dad, and I know there's some conversations he won't have, but the majority of his friends are dead. And I'm sure that's a super profound thing. I mean, I have a couple friends that I've lost, but the majority of all his friends are gone. And all of his friends from a certain era are gone, then he had to get new friends. So I think that wear and tear on someone is probably crazy, but it also keeps you super sharp. You have to be aware of a whole different set of circumstances, and it's for survival. To your point, getting a grade in a classroom, that's just getting through school.
Yeah.
Right.
Passive play is taking a whole different kind of connotation as you go through there, man. And I hear again, one of the reasons why I'm so in love with your story, because it's such a New York story through and through. In every single aspect of where you're talking about, where you draw your inspiration, where you see that extend, is New York City. It's my New York City story. I can hear the soundtrack that goes along with it. I feel the train going overhead. I can smell the streets cooking up. I can hear all of that stuff coming through there. But then I also see that there's an international component to you as well. how did that New York City awareness translate to when you got out into the world, so to speak, and started doing your investigations into different markets?
You know, it's interesting. After grad school, I lived in Milan for a minute. Stylist met me out one day and was like, "Hey, I want you to walk in my show."
Yeah. See, look, this is again
The humble flex.
You see this, y'all? You see this? I kicked it in Milan for a minute.
I just walked down the street. Somebody was like, "Yo,
I got
you?"
2 stamps in my passport, only 2. He's in Milan casually.
Yeah, but let me tell you the funniest story about that, right? And so you guys know me, right? I'm not the arrogant dude. I didn't believe this lady. She's like, "Oh, I work for D&G. I want you to walk in the show in Milan." I thought she was lying. Right, so she calls me up one day like, "Hey, I need your passport information. I'm getting you a flight." And I didn't trust her. I was like, "What, you trying to steal my identity? You know what? Here's the information." And she calls me back in less than an hour with a first-class ticket to go to Milan. And I look it up, and no lie, I still thought the lady was full of shit, right? So I was like, it was a connecting flight. And I was like, "Yo, connecting flight? What do you think this is? You think I'm getting on 2 planes?" I was like, "Yo, if you don't book me a straightaway direct ticket, I ain't going nowhere." And she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry.
Try to flex.
Yo, 20 minutes later, here's my first class direct open ticket, could fly whenever I want. And I was like, "Wait, this is for real?" I was just cursing this lady out, like. So
he was a model right away, boy. He was already a diva. My boy was a diva from the living room.
Right.
Get him.
Right.
I was like, shit, was I just giving her like my rider or something?
Yeah.
And then, I went out there and I was only supposed to go for a week and wound up being like 6-7 months. And, like the New York side of me of being able to like, okay, I'm going to walk everywhere.
Yeah.
But it was funny because I definitely walked through like the quote unquote hood of Milan where at times it'd be like 3 a.m. I'd just be walking. Because after, I think it was 2 o'clock, I think the buses stopped running.
Yeah.
And I think it was midnight was the trains. And there were definitely times where I looked up and I was like, if I was home, I would not be walking where I am right now. Right? Like you think like when you're on foreign soil, like things are different, but like no, you can still get got. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
And I'd be walking solo like everywhere.
Yo, hood is a hood, fam.
Right.
Yeah.
Everywhere though.
Yeah.
So, but I think I took that New York with me everywhere, and as a result, that almost like fearlessness to explore. And it was crazy because we talked about sneaker stuff. I got to know every person that owns sneaker stores throughout Milan. Like I could still walk it in my head like, no, you want to go to this store or that store because, in Europe they have different sneakers.
Yeah, for sure.
So like I came home with some joints. People like, yo, what are those?
What colorway is that, fam?
He got the what are those ones?
Right. Like, there was a pair of, they were like almost like a mustard green corduroy. They were embroidered with NYC ones. Now when I came home with those brown soles, like people were like,
yeah,
my man, you were supposed to bring home like 10 of those, right? Like,
like, what are you doing?
Yeah, but so yeah, I think as a result, just kind of wanting to explore and see more, and I think actually going to sleepaway camp early on makes you aware that there's more than just the city. And then having the chance to go, even though Philly is only a couple hours away, you still see something new, and that's why I always, any young person, go away to school. Because I think that encourages the explorer spirit. And I mean, I'd love to go to every country, to be honest,
Yeah.
Because I do love languages. I love cultures. I pick up languages pretty fast, so that's great. The next one is definitely Arabic because I've been spending time in the region, as you know. So definitely going back soon and going to have some pretty good events for you guys to attend. So
can't wait.
Yeah.
Sizzling. He's already cooking up again.
Cooking, bro.
Yeah.
On the move, man. Again, like I said, this man's a wealth of knowledge. He's coming back around. He's got all these different stamps in the passport book, all these different ways to investigate the world, not just through one lens, but through multiple. Danny, I want to ask you what you view success as in this space and in your exploration so far.
I think there's a couple of metrics. I mean, I think society views it as financial, and while that always makes things easier, I don't think that's the end-all, be-all. To me, success is the fact that I think if you ask people, they'll pretty much all give you the same response, that if you've known me when I was a kid or if you know me now, I've kept it the same. To me, that's success. Just because I think my word has been my word forever. So while I think the financial reward will come, that's success. I've definitely known people where you've known them in one circumstance and all of a sudden they're in a new circumstance and you go to say hi and they'll look at you and like pretend they don't know you. Like you guys know that would never be. If it's me, you guys have permission, the four of you, to jump and beat the crap out of me. Like, because if I change like that, I would hate myself.
Man.
So to me, that's success, that I think I have kept it all the way 1,000,000 as opposed to 100.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. When you come up underneath that word having to be your bond.
Yeah, that's where I was about to go with it. Yep.
Everything is a little different. Talk through that, Troy. What's that mindset? Because in 2019,
listen,
people don't have the same intentions, man.
Your word is everything. And everything you said, you did it. Couldn't talk about it if you ain't live it. I think that's just a true New York mantra, and I think that's kind of who we are as native New Yorkers. I think we meet so many different individuals, so many transplants. I think 95% of the people that I've like scratched my head or raised my eyebrow or gave a side eye to were just not from here. And I guess that's my New York bias, but I think New York different. It just, because of our circumstances, because of our adversity, because of the shit that we endure in this city, it just breeds a different kind of animal. I think we definitely have codes. You know what I'm saying? And, you know,
I'd have to disagree with that, sir.
The non-New Yorker.
Shoot your shot.
He's
only in. No, I completely agree with you, but I think that it's more of a life circumstance, right? Because I'm not from New York, but I still grew up with that same morale and same type of mindset. So I think it's more of who raised you, who groomed you.
Yeah.
So that's not even a New York thing. It's just that code of ethics of just, my word is my bond. Like, and I'm only going to talk about it if I live it. So granted, New York is where it shines the most because it is such of a gritty hustler mentality type city. But I didn't have that because I didn't grow up here. But in Baltimore, same type of shit.
But you come from B-more, which has the same kind of vibe.
Oh, yeah,
because
of
when
course.
we talk about the vibe, we're talking about the vibe. You know what I'm saying?
A ghetto, a hood everywhere.
That's the point.
It's an urban circumstance surrounded by it. You have to, if you come from one of those melting pots of cultures, but you also have your people around you and you're in a circumstance where you have personal responsibility for what goes on. As a native New Yorker, I also spent a lot of time in the South. And there's some cities in the South that are real cities. And there's some brothers out of there that are real. Also, you talk about some dudes out in the country, like in the deep woods, or like those real country dudes. There's a lot of honor and a certain code out there. So it's about being from a real neighborhood in a real area where everyone actually has to earn respect and it's not just handed out. And it's also, I think, just a central cultural thing. And
you have to wear accountability. I think that more than anything else, it keeps you reminded and keeps you grounded inside that space because, you do not, when you go out into these different spaces, you're bringing all of that history with you. It's representative of when you speak, Kyle, I hear Baltimore coming out and you got to plant your Baltimore flag. Y'all know how I feel about Brooklyn. I put it on my chest. I don't got to say it to nobody else. We did it, Brooklyn. We did it, every time, and I give Queens a hard time because, again, we love everybody that's inside of New York, but it's regional.
It's always been that way. It's always been that way.
Listen, fam, I went to St. John's for a little bit. I know what's going on in the mix. I've been out there, and I still got love for them, but I know where my flag is planted.
Same here, fam. Same here.
I see how it is, and the beauty of that is what I want to hope to reinstill inside that other space and that other generation that's coming up in those kids that's half that lifetime displaced, because I don't hear that same level of, I'm proud to be from here and it means something, so I got to rock with that because this is what it is, So hopefully, as we're going through these investigations, Danny, we are making sure that we're setting that example as you go forward. Now, you, in your exploration, have worked with kids in multiple different spaces, and that seems like it's some important work to a certain extent. Would that be correct to assume?
100%, yeah.
Okay, what is aspirational for you next in your endeavors as you go forward, and where do you see legacy in your story?
Probably a little bit twofold. Aspirational, we touched on the Middle East.
Right.
We talk about our word. So there, let's just say we were all having a meeting. If they say yes to something, while they put paperwork together, they actually don't need to because it's legally binding there. Like they'll get blackballed if they say yes and backtrack. So they're very specific with their words. They'll say, okay, we have an intent to move forward and we think there's a synergy. We haven't said yes yet. We need to figure out how to make that work. And I really do appreciate that just because, they are very much of their word and their honor. And so I do have a few very big projects that I'm working on in the region, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and Saudi specifically.
Okay.
And then for 22, working on something big for the World Cup.
Okay.
So if all goes well, inshallah, I'll be there quite a bit.
Switching up the language on him already.
My guy.
My man. Meet him in his princely robes when y'all see him out in these streets is what he's trying to tell you, you know?
Check the gram one time.
Finally adorned, you know?
But to bring it back to the youth, I mean, my hope is that some of the kids that we're able to impact will be able to either come with us and work on those things, or will impact the young youth there to work on some of those things. A little different there because most of the youth there are very affluent, if they're natural citizens.
Right.
A lot of those places have a lot of immigrants because none of the places you'd go to get fast food, etc., are natural citizens. They're usually immigrants, right? So I'd prefer to try and work with those young people because they don't get the opportunity.
Yeah.
They're there for work, whereas the folks that have grown up there, they have a certain level of wealth that we all can't imagine. So I know that I always say, like, no matter what we all achieve in life, we have to remember somebody helped us get there.
For sure.
So ideally, even if it's one young person, ideally to be able to have an impact on at least one young person and maybe bring them along and show them the ropes of something. You know, and one day maybe also my own children, right? But yeah, I think if you're not able to kind of pay it forward, kind of what's the point?
I feel you on that, my brother. Y'all got anything on that sentiment?
Definitely. I feel like the children are literally the future. Like, we joke about that. I think about, like, Coming to America and Randy Watson and, like, you know, I believe the children.
Chocolate.
Yeah, sexual chocolate. But
That boy good.
In all reality, if I forgot who said it, but it's too late to get to the adults, right? A lot of times they're the ones that are the last to hit that curve, the learning curve, if you will. So you got to get the kids while they're young. And we don't value exposure as much as we should. Like, I remember just being a kid and being exposed to different things and seeing the kids that weren't. And it's like, damn, that made a world of a difference. So just being able to give an opportunity to somebody that would have never had the opportunity otherwise is impactful, because they're going to remember that for the rest of their life. And you never know what that seed is going to look like when it's planted or when it grows, you know? So I champion that for completely.
And I think even if you go deeper, like to the Board of Ed, like, it should be mandatory that you become fluent in a second language.
For sure.
Talk about that for a second.
I mean, because that's global exposure at that point. Like, if you get dropped, let's just say you speak Spanish, there's half a world that you could probably go to, you know? So, you know, every other country learns English. We're, in a way, arrogant enough to be like, I'm just learning English.
Yeah.
And that's short-sighted, right? Like,
Extremely.
I mean, if you could speak 3, 4, I think my grandfather spoke 7 languages, but then decided, okay, his kids need to learn English. Now, he should have taught them all those languages, because I'm like, I should have spoke 7 languages. You know? You know, I can have conversations in a couple, but it's like, no, I want to be able to speak, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, like, it's conversations if the person's kind enough to speak slowly.
Yeah.
But if they start yapping away, I'm going to miss a lot,
fair amount.
right? So, yeah, I think starting in elementary school, kids should all be taught in a language that's not their native tongue. Because especially if you're an immigrant, now you're in school with kids that they're only speaking English, but you're speaking 2 or 3 languages.
Right.
So you have, in my opinion, that's a leg or 2 up.
Yeah, it definitely could be. I mean, for me, it wasn't until I got to try to do business internationally where I felt that pressure switch in the opposite direction. So you literally be sitting at a table full of people in a boardroom, and I worked with a company that had headquarters in multiple different countries. So you would hear French on one side, German on the other side, Italian on one side, Spanish on the other side. And they're like, oh, we have one American here, so let's be nice and speak English now. And it's like, damn, the whole room just kind of played it out.
Shit.
Yeah, exactly.
You put your head down. You know,
I
damn.
like, damn, man.
Tony said, you're Panama?
Yeah, right? Even if, but they're,
Que tu sabes.
yeah. Hearing German Spanish, different type of Spanish, fam. I was like, your accent is not something that I can understand you speaking it right now. But it was wild because it immediately puts the focus back on that side. And I felt like I was not prepared for the first time in a little bit to be inside a room. And I'm like, I can't measure up. This is what the competition is doing. They got 6 different ways to serve this up to you. I'm lacking. I got to go get my little book, trying to find some little definitions in there. But, you know, so I definitely agree. If you can, folks, please go out there, pick up a book, learn another language because it's going to help you open up so many other doors, you know?
You also have things like Rosetta Stone and Duolingo
For sure.
that you can utilize. Like my son is being... Like right now, my nanny speaks Spanish, solely Spanish. My son, he's only 8 months, but it was imperative that we got a nanny that spoke Spanish so that he learned Spanish as a second language
It's
by the time he's 3 years
man.
old.
And that's a beautiful thing that y'all build in, you know?
For real.
For sure.
Sage is gonna grow up to be a god, boy. Ain't
Yo,
he?
he really is.
Yeah. You know what's going to happen to him? He going to walk into a room one day and somebody's going to be like, stop right there.
I'm taking you to Milan.
How do you feel like walking? And like, you know, again, an opportunity.
You have to call up Uncle Danny. Hey, Uncle Danny, where do I go to get some sneakers in Milan?
Where's the wares, fam? Let me know.
Yeah, I got a direct message the other day actually about him. Like someone was like, yo, he needs to model. I was like, listen, I don't really know much about that. I don't know where to go. And they're like, well, I know everything. And like, you need to give me a call. And so we're trying to explore that now. But yeah, it's already happening for him.
See?
And he's not even one.
It's happening, man.
That might be your retirement
That
money
might
right
be,
there.
baby.
That-
As long as his trust is set, you know what I'm saying? Like whatever we get, it's going to him, dude. That's what it's all about, man. You spoke about you wanting to have your own children one day, man. That's something you truly inspire to do. I think you'd be an amazing father.
I think so. Thank you.
I know, I really do. I think you're just a great human being overall. Danny, we really, we love to ask this kind of question where the question is, if you can leave our listeners with one piece of wisdom or one gem for them to potentially level up in their lives, what would it be? But I think the question that I want to ask you, because you seem to be extremely transformative, very hands-on at things, is why don't you leave our listeners with one thing that they can do to better someone else? Because I think you've done that for all of us and you continue to do that for everyone else. You're great, but you make other people better.
I mean, we spoke about like, don't forget that no matter what you achieve, somebody else helped you get there, right? But that's also, I think, if you think about like one word, it's accountability, right? So like, be accountable in yourself, because by being accountable in yourself, you force everyone else around you to be accountable. So that would be the one thing I'd leave everybody with. Like I think if everybody in society was just accountable, we'd be pretty good.
Own your shit.
Yeah.
Man, listen, I don't know about y'all, but I'm looking into my passports, my vaccines, because wherever my brother's pulling up, I'm touching down on some sand.
I'm coming with you.
I need to understand what's happening inside this mix, yo.
Real quick, Danny, where can I get the book?
So the website for the foundation is joyjuiceinc.org. And then if you do grab a copy, please send me a message because I'll sign it for you. I don't like to send out a book that's not signed. So just please tell me who to sign it for, and I'd be happy to send it out and sign it for you.
For sure, man. Let everybody else know where they can also keep up with any of the endeavors that you have going on, or how we can keep intact with all the crazy stuff that you coming down the line with. How can they find you?
Social media is easy. Last name, Alotta, Alotta. So a lot of ways, or joyjuice.org. That's across all social media, those two.
For sure. So many ways.
Yeah.
How many ways?
Every which way.
A lot of damn ways, man. We're trying to let you know. Folks, once again, it's been another fantastic episode of Off the Strength. I'm a trainer called Tony.
K.R. Jones.
Troy Brooks.
Your trainer, Corey.
Peace and much love to y'all. Till next time, we'll see you soon.